Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II-based podcast. And we are back live thanks to the hardworking engineers over at T-Mobile. Jeff was able to join us once again. As always, we always get things going here at Digital 410 Media. Then right before the show, something blows up. However, it wasn't our fault, but the fine people who work hard over at T-Mobile, despite the fact that my phone don't work half the time and our 5G is horrible. Thanks so much for at least getting Jeff back online and joining us. And joining us as always, because he doesn't have T-Mobile, Henry Sledge. Henry, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be here. How are you guys?
Oh, I think we're losing your audio a little bit. And Jeff, how are you? Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I can hear Henry a little bit better than you there.
Well, what are you going to do? Can everybody hear me now?
One of those nights.
I think we're good. So how's everybody doing? It's been a while. We've been here and around and back and forth and putting up best up episodes and just getting along the best we can. How's everybody doing? It's been a while. Can you still not hear me?
You're fading in and out, Don.
I don't know why.
Well, to answer your question, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I
Okay,
hear you like
so
you're
to
sitting
answer
right
your
next to me.
question, doing just fine. You know, getting ready for Christmas, getting back on track after everything that's been going on.
Christmas is a crazy time of year. I mean, it's crazy for us now, but you know, Jeff and I spoke about this in the past where like Christmas was always the ever non-stopping moving goalpost of when the boys are going to be home from the war. It was always, oh, if you get, you know, we'll be home by Christmas this year. And then next year they move that goalpost again. We'll be home by Christmas this year. And then they move the goalpost again. It's like it never stopped.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You hear me all right, Jeff?
No, like I said, I can hear Henry good. You're fading out pretty good there.
Sorry about that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. But I heard what you said, and I think, you're absolutely right. Christmas has always been that kind of that indexing point for our boys overseas, and you certainly, obviously you wanted to come home, but in the event that you didn't, you certainly didn't want it to happen around Christmas, just for the sake of your families. And it's a big time of year for us, and I think we may have talked about this before on the show, but if not, I think it's worth mentioning again if we did. Those telegrams, during the war, 3 to 4 weeks out, typically before we lost that soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. 3 to 4 weeks later is when the family would get notified. So that kind of really makes you think about all of those things that happened in November, that it would have been right around Christmas time. Immediately I think we think of Tarawa, but so many other actions that happened in the month of November from 42, 43, and 44. That how that must have been for those families around Christmas, that their son or their father or brother was already been gone about a month, and that's when they're getting that telegram. So I think that's really important to think about, when we think about Christmas time and the war.
And one thing I think gets kind of overlooked, because we all see the pictures of the guy underneath the shelter half on Thanksgiving eating a turkey leg, and we see the photos during Christmas, but let's not forget New Year's Eve too. So not only are they not around for the family for Thanksgiving, they're not around for, that's just, there's 3 major holidays, at least in the American culture, right there alone, that these guys are overseas, whether in a foxhole, on a ship, in a sub, in the Pacific, sitting over in Europe somewhere, maybe North Africa, Italy. And I can only imagine, and I think out of the 3 of us, Jeff, you could probably attest to this the most, being in a similar situation. That's probably that and your birthdays when your battle buddies, your guys in your platoon, they really are probably the most important for you, because you don't have that family, and so they're your substitute.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's definitely a time where, you spend a lot of time in close quarters with somebody. It's going to happen. You have your little tips, your little argument, like anything else, right? Like in any marriage, really.
Yep.
But
now we have
that
no idea what you
always-
mean by that. You'll have to find a better analogy. Keep going.
I mean, but yeah, you definitely start coming together around the holidays just because it's a natural thing to do. A family and those brothers in arms next to you become your family, and they may be like your real family, where you may only want to see them once or twice a year, and you're stuck with them every day for however long you're deployed. But yeah, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, you always we kind of got a little closer, and you're right. You're kind of maybe a little extra looking out. You're kind of a little extra checking your own six, just because it's just that's not when you want to go.
Yeah.
Certainly, you don't want to go at all, obviously, but yeah.
There's also got to be the time where the more mundane tasks get to be a little more irritating. I would imagine it's like, really, I got to do this on Christmas Eve. Really, today we can't do this tomorrow. I can't burn this human waste tomorrow. I guess the latrine doesn't clean itself, but there's just. By the way, real quick, speaking of friends and family, shout out to the YouTube. Gabe Rivieras checking in, and JT Rocker 99 says howdy gang. We kind of have some exciting news, and I didn't run this by you guys because I thought, well, you'll probably agree. First and foremost, why don't Henry, you announce the big life change in our fellow listener here, Gabe's life, and give him a shout out on that.
Say again, Don.
Can you guys not hear me?
I've got you. Yeah.
I was going to have Jeff, kind of announce our friend Gabe is having a huge life change, and we wanted to congratulate him on that.
Yes, absolutely. And I actually texted him, I don't know, man, it was 30 minutes ago, buddy?
Before you lost your service on T-Mobile?
Yeah, I texted Gabe to see if it was okay. Because, I'd love to do the honors of that. So, yeah, Gabe Rivera is a longtime buddy of mine, and he's just one of those great reenactors. If you don't follow him, you're wrong. You need to start following him and see those amazing pictures of him and his buddies. He was a huge part of the National Museum of Pacific Wars, living history program down there. That's where I met him, and was really lucky to work with him there, and just to stay in touch, even though he's in some weird part of the country, like I don't know, Washington State or something goofy like that.
Weirdo.
But that's not going to last too long, because he has officially joined the United States Navy, and very excited for him to see. I think he said his A school is going to be down in Pensacola, Florida.
Down in my area.
So that's going to be a change. But Don, you were cutting a little bit in and out. So I thought you said somebody had a wife change.
No, well,
It's like,
well, I'm sure
somebody had a wife
somebody out there listening is, and they've been trying to get their mind off of that. And now you just reminded them again. They stop listening to the country music. They say, I'm going to listen to WTSP, so I ain't got to worry about the divorce. And then you bring that up. So, so much for that. If you guys are listening on YouTube, thank you so much. If my voice is cutting in and out, good news is everything's recorded here locally and everything sounds fantastic. And so for those who are listening to this tomorrow, they won't know. They'll say, what the hell they keep saying? Don sounds great. And so if you're watching on YouTube, just download it on the app tomorrow, and you'll hear the whole conversation as if you're sitting in the room with us. And because Gabe is enlisting, and hopefully you guys can hear me, I want to throw this out there. Gabe, send us, obviously, boot camp times. You don't have a lot of free time to write emails to your favorite podcast, but when time, it becomes available, we do want to hear from you and anybody else. If you're a frequent listener or even a new listener to this podcast and you just enlisted in the service, please email us. We want to we want to keep up with you guys, get your firsthand experiences. Email us at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com, and we'll make a segment where we read our letters from our guys who are currently in boot camp, or even if you're active server, we want to hear from you too. But I think a lot of our listeners who maybe don't have firsthand military experience would kind of like to hear modern day stories of boot camp, so they can compare them to stories like we heard from, You'll Be Sorry by Sid Phillips and the like.
Yeah, modern day stories of boot camp, they're always a good laugh.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting too to see how much has changed compared to when you went not too long ago, because we've all heard the stories how they've had to change things up a little bit. So it'd be interesting to kind of contrast and compare from when you were there.
Yeah, it's been 21 years since I was in basic, so I think it's changed exponentially over the past couple decades, although it doesn't feel that long
I was going to
ago.
say, isn't it crazy how the older you get, 20 years doesn't seem like, oh, I did that 20, 20 years on my head. It's just like 20 years does not seem like anything nowadays. It's just, how time passes as you get older is just weird.
It's incredible. And, I think it was a World War II that gave me the best analogy about how fast life goes. And he said that life is like a roll of toilet paper, and every sheet represents 1 year. The sheets are all the same size.
You sure that wasn't
But
a
for
director
whatever
cut
reason,
of
as
Forrest
you get
Gump?
closer to the end of the roll,
This
they
is a
go
great
by
analogy,
quicker.
by the way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's true. It really is. And I've seen that now. I think every profession I feel like I've ever been in, I was like the youngest guy in the room, right? And naturally, that's going to stop at becoming a high school teacher. You're surrounded by young people all day long. But now I'm finding that there's teachers that I work with that I'm technically old enough to be their father, and it's like, what happened to me being the young guy?
Not anymore.
Now we all have, we know I'm the Dick Clark of my generation, right? You think I'm like 25 years old, but I'm not.
I thought you were like 19 and a
yeah,
half.
it's been weird to see how much time has gone by and to see these young people and watching them grow. And of course I see it with my own children, and it really does put things into perspective. We say, 20 years ago wasn't that long ago. Okay, so 80 years
Exactly.
was really not that long
Exactly.
ago. And that's what's so great about this podcast and our listeners and what they do and what we do to keep that going, because once we lose that primary connection with the past, World War II will become just as obscure as the Peloponnesian Wars, because there's nobody left, right? There's nobody there to tell us, and then it fades off, and then it's just books
and video games.
And we gotta keep that connection going beyond the books, just those stories and these personal experiences. And the more I forget who said it, but something like, I may butcher this quote, but something about you die twice in your life. Once, when your body goes, and the second time when nobody speaks your name.
Correct. Once when you pass, and the second time when, yes, I just butchered as well. But yeah, either when your friends forget you or they stop talking about you, something like that. But yeah.
Something like that. So let's just not ever stop talking about them, and they'll be good.
Let's just get that right. So we'll go on the old Google machine.
There you go.
Yeah. See, this is something we need a producer for so we can have it in real time. Let's see. They say you died twice. One time when you stop breathing, the second time a bit later when somebody says your name for the last time.
Yeah.
See how much more elegant that is when we're not butchering it? But speaking of mail call and all that, when you're sending us the email at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com, head on over to WTSPWorldWar2.com and click on that Patreon link. Sign up and subscribe. It goes a long way to help us what we do here, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, I know, Jeff, you were perusing around the old what's the scuttlebutt.com or WTSPWorldWar2.com yesterday, and you noticed a typo, and I quickly fixed it today. But did you see the video I posted of it's called like the 43-year-old man who's lived, the 35-year-old man who lives in 1946?
I didn't click on it, but I saw it. What's that about?
It's a BBC. It's a quick 15-minute video, the BBC, where over in London, there's a guy much like us. He takes living history to the extreme. He lives in a house that he is completely outfitted to live like it's 1943. The only modern day convenience he has a small LED TV hidden behind a picture frame that he watches when no one's around. And he has a small mini fridge tucked away. But everything else in his house is straight London's 1943.
He also has no girlfriend, right?
Correct.
Okay.
He mentioned the fact
Either that or a really understanding one.
No, he mentioned the fact that he would probably have to have a wife that'd be willing to have two homes. But
yeah, really. But
the crazy thing is that took me down a weird YouTube wormhole, and I came across this channel called Okay, sorry, I had to scroll up. It's called Crow's Eye Productions. Now, the weird thing about this is the videos are done over in England somewhere, and the voiceover is usually done by a female, very well put together, but it's a crazy channel called Getting Dressed. I'm like, well, what kind of weird adult nonsense? These people, they actually create videos to show exactly what people wore in certain centuries. They're like living historians. And so they have, for example, getting dressed in World War I as a young woman. They have what getting dressed in the 14th century as a plowman. And it's a great way for research. Like if you're getting into living history, they have all these videos down to like the undergarments of what, a male dandy in the 13th century would wear. And it's like super crazy, but I came across them like watching these videos, and they have one about World War II. We talked about it in the past. What was the female farmers called over in Europe? The land. Oh, crikey. Oh, it slipped my mind. But anyhow, they show exactly what the women and the women's land corps over in England wear, and it's pretty cool. So if like you're wanting to maybe get into a certain century or just curious about the type of clothing that they wore, it's a pretty interesting YouTube channel. It's called Crow's Eye Production, or just look for Getting Dressed, and they have hundreds of videos on here showing like what people wore through different times throughout history, and it's got a lot of interesting stuff on there. It's like it just took me down that wormhole after watching that video that I posted on our page, because I thought it was crazy that cat was living like it's 1943 all the time.
Yeah. Well, I know we kind of had a little break in our communication right before we went on, but, talking about, making sure that we're speaking their names and they're not being forgotten and going away I think that may be a great segue for Henry to share what you had mentioned right before we went on. If you're prepared to, I thought that would be
sure,
kind of neat.
Absolutely. So as we get closer to Christmas, we are coming up into the season of the Battle of the Bulge. Iconic military action in World War II, one of my favorite to study. So everybody knows the story of my dad, Sledgehammer, being in the Pacific in the 1st Marine Division. What a lot of people don't know is that my uncle, his older brother, went to the Citadel, was commissioned a lieutenant, was in armor, and was in the 741st Tank Battalion. Anyway, to skip right ahead to where I wanted to get to, my uncle Edward, Captain Edward S. Sledge II, won a Bronze Star on the first day. Actually, it was right before, it was December 15th of 44, and I just wanted to read the citation. Captain Edward S. Sledge II, 741st Tank Battalion, United States Army, for heroic action on the 15th of December 1944 in Belgium. On the evening of 15 December 1944, in the vicinity of Wallerscheid, Germany, the tank company which Captain Sledge was commanding was called upon by the infantry for assistance as anti-tank defense after the pillbox area had been taken. Captain Sledge's company of tanks were to move to the area of the infantrymen from an assembly area 1 mile from their lines. Unfortunately, one of Captain Sledge's platoon leaders was not familiar with the situation that had developed. Fully cognizant of the fact that the situation was extremely critical, Captain Sledge fearlessly and without regard for his own personal safety dismounted from his tank and on foot led his tanks through the dark, fire-swept roads and fields in order to keep them clear of mines. He steadfastly refused to take cover when the tanks drew a constant rain of heavy enemy artillery fire. He did not rest or take cover until he had led his tanks to their objective and contacted the commanding officer of the infantry unit. For the valor, devotion to duty, and superior leadership displayed by Captain Sledge reflects great credit upon himself and is in keeping with the highest tradition of the military service. And so I'm thinking he was trying to link up with units of the 2nd Infantry Division right there, because they were up on the north shoulder. That's where Wallerscheid Crossroads was, right up near Monschau, Rochrath, Brinkhilt. So I know the 741st Tank Battalion was heavily involved with the 2nd Infantry Division and the 99th, actually, around that time. But anyway, that is my Uncle Edward's Bronze Star citation. And thank you guys for letting me read that.
No, thank you. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story of just somebody that's just has, some guys just don't have a coherent understanding of the ever-changing situations on the battlefield like your uncle did. And, that's so common thing where your guy in charge, in this instance, this platoon leader, just kind of for whatever reason, not understanding the situation, that to have what your uncle did. Gosh, I'm sure everybody in his unit was like, that dude's the man. That probably was the same kind of scenario as when we watch Band of Brothers and you watch Captain Spears running across.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, like it's,
You're gonna
hey, this
get me
just has to
killed.
be done. And, you know, I've been around the armored guys a little bit. I obviously have no idea how they were then, but, you know, armored guys are kind of like, you know, death before dismount now. Like,
Mhm.
they don't want to leave their tank. They don't want to get their boots muddy. They ride for a reason. And, you know, so that's kind of their mantra, death before dismount. So if any of that was around back then, and I'm sure to some extent it was, again, for your uncle to do that, to say, you know what, I'm dismounting, I'm taking charge of the situation, I'm figuring out what's going on, I'm making sure that we're not losing lives, you know, senselessly, and being able to communicate on the battlefield, because we, you know, that's the biggest change, I think, in anything, the technology is comm on the battlefield and how different it was then and now. And that's just a great citation. I don't know if a Bronze Star is, you know, quite, I don't know. I think that could have been elevated a little bit listening to that, because that's very impressive.
Well, if we've learned anything from the books we read, usually they're nominated for a higher rank, but then they usually gets knocked down because, well, we don't
Right.
want to hand out too many of the silver stars, or we don't want to hand out too many Medal of Honors, so we'll just give him a Bronze Star. But yeah, I'm sure he was probably nominated for a higher award, and somebody somewhere said, "No, we got to keep our numbers low." So, but even
Yeah.
still, a Bronze Star, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
No.
No, you're right.
You know, and I just had a thought, and hopefully you guys can hear me. I think maybe that's something tankers and perhaps maybe Navymen have in common, is when you spend so much time either in a tank or on a vessel, it becomes more than just a vehicle or a mode of transportation. It's your home. And kind of like we learned from watching Fury, you know, I'm not going to leave my home. I'm here for, you know, I'm going to hold down and protect my home. And so I think that's probably where a lot of that death before dismount comes from, just like you see that in the Navy.
Yeah, I think anywhere where there was a vehicle involved. I mean, you can think about pilots and their attachment to their aircraft and aircrew. And yeah, I think there's a little bit of that anywhere, from if you were, you know, in a Jeep to a Sherman to a B-17 to a sub.
Maybe not the poor runner stuck on the bicycle. I'm sure he's had to get rid of that damn thing. Riding through
That's
the
a
ruts
good
in
one.
Europe probably weren't very fun getting shot at. Thin, skinny ass tires. I've ridden one of those. We have a reenactor down here who has like 4 or 5 of them. He always brings them out to the events, and those things there's something else. I'll tell you what, thin wall tires and boots, and just, yeah, I could not imagine trying to ride that with purpose in any way, shape, and or form, even back then. Even with it being,
Yeah, I can't imagine the leather soles on those boots and those little dinky pedals.
Oh,
Yeah.
even worse, the Germans with their hobnails trying to ride that.
Right.
Well, it is quieter than walking, though. Oh,
That's a fact.
real quick, Jeff, before we continue on with the Battle of the Bulge stuff, I just, because I know you might forget, you're planning on, and we always want to give and shine light on people who are trying to preserve history in their own way. And you shared a link with us to something I'd never even occurred to me in all my wild dreams of possibly opening a museum. Explain to everybody this great thing this guy did in your neck of the woods, and where you're going to go when weather turns.
Yeah. Oh man. So a couple of years ago, when I was still in Pacific War Museum, had somebody come up to me and it was, I think, not quite open yet, but more than a concept. Like, it was happening, it was going on. And he said, "Hey, look, I work for a guy who created a World War II themed miniature golf course, putt-putt."
Do what now?
And that immediately, not just when he said World War II, but just me and my family, we do putt-putt. All right. Like, this is what we do. When we go on vacation, we have done miniature golf courses from Florida to Tucson, Arizona. Literally. I mean, if there's a nice putt-putt course, we're taking the kids there.
I wish you would have told me, because we have one complete with baby alligators across the river.
Oh yeah, I think there was one. The other one we went to outside of Fort Myers or Matlacha, or
Yeah,
wherever
probably
that
Fort
area in
Myers,
Florida
yeah.
we went. Yeah, I think they had alligators. But yeah, so It's what we do. And to like, when I heard that this guy, and it's a private deal, it's private land. He bought however many acres and had a Quonset hut brought in. That's the museum. You're inside,
Who's your
aspect of the
Quonset hut
museum.
guy?
And then, brought in some World War II vets. And I think, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was his grandfather.
Yeah, he said his
maybe
grandfather in the
grandfather's
video.
brother, something like that. He had a family tie
Yep.
to the Second World War in some way, and it meant a lot to him. And he built this amazing World War II themed miniature golf course. And you have a Pearl Harbor hole, you have a Mighty Eighth hole, and some of it just has to do with the way the turf is, colored.
Yeah.
To have these silhouettes. I think there's like a silhouette of the Arizona at Pearl, that you're walking on. I saw now there's a mock-up like P-51 that's built outside there on one of the holes.
Yeah, it's a playground. And then one of the holes looks like maybe Tarawa, where it actually has blue artificial grass and then green. And then at the beginning of each hole, it actually has a history. Like the first one, it's D-Day, and so it's the longest day. It's the longest par 5 hole in mini golf course in the United States. So you have the longest hole, and there's a little plaque talking about D-Day, and it goes around the timeline. And then at the end, at the 19th hole, instead of a bar, he actually has a museum with his. I think part of it was his wife said, "Hey, you gotta get the stuff out of the house," and he said, "Well, okay, mini golf museum."
There you go.
And so he actually has I watched that video. It looks pretty cool, and he has complete uniforms from people of the area who fought, and he has a wax uniform in there, and a Jeep, and all kinds of stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, it's brilliant, and dang it, wish I'd have thought of that. That made a great little cush retirement for me out here.
Well, we talk about franchise. We talk about all the time is how do you keep young kids who need tangible things and interactive things to care about World War II? I mean, we try it with living history events and it works to some effect, but you play mini golf, and then by the way, let's go inside and look at the stuff that this represents. And so it's
a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So it's in Buda, and I'm trying to think of the actual correct name for it, but I think it's just Memorial Mini Golf.
Yeah, I think so.
Memorial Miniature Golf and Museum, something like that. Because that's what it's about too. I mean, it's about memorializing, what these guys did, and I think he had a P-51 pilot there for the opening. I want to say something like that. He had some World War II that's come by. But yeah, it's down in Buda, which is just outside of Austin. So pretty close to where we're about an hour from where I live. So, but yeah, like Don mentioned, we're like in the 70s, and then all of a sudden it's going to be winter for the weekend.
It's getting cold here too.
Yeah, we were going to go this Saturday, but we're going to wait till it's not 40 degrees and raining. We'll wait till it be 75 again, Yeah,
it's called the Memorial Miniature Golf and Museum. It's primarily a weekend operation. Clearly, this guy has to have another gig to pay his bills. So Monday through Thursday, they are in fact closed. But if you're in that area of Texas, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're open 4 to 9 on Friday, 10 a.m. to 9 on Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we always want to shine light on people trying to find new ways to preserve history, and let's be honest, and a new way to keep museums open. I'm sure the miniature golf admission fees will help keep the lights on in the museum, because sadly during the pandemic, so many of them closed down.
Yeah, you got that right. It's been tough, here at this museum. Of course, we're only open 3 days a week as well, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's tough sometimes. Luckily there's so much to do that it's not like I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs. But it's certainly so much better when you have a good number of people coming through, as opposed to you're there for 3 hours and like, hey, all right, somebody to talk to. It is what it is. It's all volunteer run, and a lot of locals that are help keeping it going and donating to it. In fact, boom, again, our buddy Gabe donating some really cool artifacts. I'll be I'll send some pictures too that's going to be entered into our collection, stuff that we don't have at the Air Museum that he's very generous to let us display. So we're really excited about that. So yeah, there's still people who donate to museums. There's still people that come to museums, but again, if you're not kind of, like you said, if you're not reaching that next generation, I mean, you guys really care about what I do, but what I'm really trying to do is target Henry's son. I know Henry loves this stuff, but I'm really, that's kind of been our driving force with this museum and this cadet program that we started 2 years ago now. We're not interested in how much, your 40-year-old or your 65-year-old enjoys. We that's easy. It's the 13-year-old. How do we get that person, that youngster involved and appreciative of what was done for them and what it took. And sometimes it really doesn't take much, sometimes you just show one little thing. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. I want to know more. Mm-hmm. But it's tough sometimes. We just had our Pearl Harbor anniversary at school, and we were kind of asking kiddos, all right, guys, what do you think? What was a big thing that happened 81 years ago today? And boy, some of the answers, it really puts things into perspective. I mean, I still have high school students ask me what it was like in Nam. And I'm like...
You see, what do you do? Tell them, go watch Platoon, man. I mean,
yeah. What do y'all know about death?
Looks like the worm's turned for you. But
yeah, it is what it is.
I want to play a little clip, and this will help segue us back into the topic of this podcast, which is World War II, and we'll get back into Battle of the Bulge. But here's a little segue. I listened to the Adam Carolla podcast. And they had the guy who writes all the books with Bill O'Reilly, The Killing Pat and this and that. And Adam Carolla's one of his co-hosts / weather news person. Her name is Gina Grad, and she's of Jewish descent. And she had a question for the co-author of Killing Pat and a lot of the other Bill O'Reilly books. And he kind of glossed over her. He didn't really give her what I thought was the appropriate answer to this question. I thought, who better to answer this question than the World War II podcast? So here's a quick clip of her question, and I want you guys, maybe we can answer it for you.
I have a question, being someone who's very interested in World War II, but not nearly as knowledgeable as either of you in this realm. From what we're told, it feels like people say the Americans sure took their sweet time getting over there. Why is that? And can you speak to that a little bit? We knew, we knew what was going on with Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. We knew all of that, right?
No, not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning, no. but we had known it.
The New York Times was tamping down that story.
See, they don't teach this in Hebrew school.
Yeah, no.
But I am wondering,
Chris can find that. But the New York Times, lest you think whatever they're doing with COVID or the Hunter Biden laptop is new, they've been doing this shit for a long time.
Very interesting.
And so I thought it probably would behoove us to explain to people the reason that took us, quote unquote, so long is because, as you guys know, because of where our military was before we got involved in World War II. We weren't ready to fight. That's why the Marine Corps was sent down the Pacific first, because they were more, quote unquote, battle ready than the Army was at that point. And so maybe if you guys want to give your thoughts on what took us so long, quote unquote, to get involved in the European theater of the war.
Ooh.
Jeff, while you're formulating what I'm sure will be a better answer than what I'm going to give, I'll just jump out and say, we dove in pretty quick with the 8th Air Force getting B-17s airborne over Europe. And what, Jeff, was it late 42?
August of 42 was the first raid.
I mean, so right away, you've got a lot of young men putting it on the line, and B-17s and P-47s and whatever else was, the P-51s weren't extant at that point, obviously, but we were jumping into it as quick as we could. As far as a massive land force, I mean, like what has become iconically known as D-Day. I mean, shit, it took a while to stand that up and get them trained and get them in there and get them equipped and get them trained and get them parsed out to units. I mean, you don't just snap your fingers and make that happen. I mean, what was our Army ranked at the time of Pearl Harbor?
I don't think
something absurd.
Yeah, we weren't even on the board.
17th.
Yeah, I mean, so I for anybody who says, well, we knew about what was happening at Birkenau and Auschwitz and all those things, and to what the guy said, we really didn't at first. Okay, but I go back to what I said. Say that to the descendant of a B-17 crewman who was flying missions over France or Germany in 1942.
Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with pop cultures, and somewhat rightfully so, but we've discussed it on here. For the non-World War II aficionado, everybody thinks D-Day was our introduction into the war. You know, we rarely give any real, at least in pop culture view and wide broadcast, we never talk about the North Africa campaign. We rarely talk about Italy. Wasn't until HBO of the Pacific that, you know, your father and his comrades got their just due of what we did down the Pacific. Yes, it took us a while to get over to Europe, but we were already fighting since August 7, 1942. And, you know, and prior to that with the Doolittle raids and all that stuff. And once again, we were in the war. We just weren't in that area yet because we had strategic areas that we had to achieve before we got to that point. And not to mention a whole hell of a lot of training.
Yeah.
I mean, so much training to go get involved.
And not only that, but you had the leaders like Churchill, Stalin. You know, everybody had to sit down and decide who was going to do what. Go ahead, Jeff. You're going to say something.
Yeah, no, it's so easy for somebody to criticize something like that. I mean, I think if we really dug deep, it would amaze people how quickly, to me, we not only mobilized, but to create, like you said, what we did at D-Day, and then to turn around and do something even larger less than a year later at Okinawa should blow people's socks off. But I think the biggest thing that we really, the concentration camps aside, because naturally there was just so much propaganda flying in the Second World War. There were so many things from our allies. Naturally, I mean, you got to think that England is probably making everything up that they possibly can to get us in the war to begin with. But what you have to understand is the ridiculous fickleness, the materialistic expectations of entitlement that is the American civilian public. And like we just mentioned beginning in this podcast, 20 years ago wasn't all that long ago. Man, it feels like that was not that long ago. Well, 20 years ago, our boys were dying in the First World War. And there was a lot of people that, that left a bad taste in their mouth. Not just the boys that lost, but the boys that came home and quote unquote won. And I don't know who actually wins a war politically. I guess we do, but the boys that fought and died are no different than the boys that fought and died. Right. Yeah. So our American boys came home, and now you're going to expect their 17-year-old son to go do what they just experienced. It better take a whole heck of a lot of convincing.
Oh, and these are the children of the generation who were told you fought the war to end all wars. Well, what the hell happened to that?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, airplanes and machine guns and that kind of stuff melding with, 19th century doctrine was just ridiculous. I mean, just imagine Gatling guns at Lexington and Concord. That's World War One. And right? and then airplanes.
And the gas and the amount of gas those guys dealt with.
Right. So for 20 short years later, to expect us to do the same thing on a larger scale with what you said, we were not as prepared a military. Now, I don't know if it's fair to say that the Marines were more prepared to fight than the Army at the beginning of the war. I don't see it that way. I think that they were designed for that type of environment based on their experiences in the Banana Wars in the 20s.
Sure.
This is more their style.
Yep.
Obviously
Jungle
we
warfare.
know, and I say this not to mess with Marines, even though I usually do, but I think it's, I do, but I'm not this time. That war in the Pacific could not have been won without the Army and the Army Air Corps there.
Sure. Absolutely.
We all know this, but that's still a second aside to, like Don said, it was a Europe first.
Mm-hmm.
FDR said that, even though, yes, technically we landed on Tulagi and Guadalcanal on the 7th of August, and the Army didn't step foot until November in North Africa, 3 months later. But to Henry's point, yeah, B-17s, 8th Air Force, which was like almost not even going to happen. The Mighty 8th was not the Mighty 8th in August of 1942. The Mighty 8th was a mighty experiment. And same thing, that attrition rate, like, do we want to send up 10 eight, 9, 10 guys in this airplane that almost didn't really ever happen. The Model 299 almost didn't happen. So,
and not only that, but let's not forget the Lend-Lease program. As soon as we re-geared all of our car manufacturing plants, stopped making refrigerators, I mean, all the stuff that we stopped making to make war goods, as we were stockpiling our stuff, we were sending stuff over to the Russians, over to the Brits, over to our allies. So, yeah, we hadn't sent quote-unquote boots on the ground, but we're definitely sending gear over there while we were trying to come up with enough stuff to outfit our guys. And by the way, 1939, the world was a hell of a lot bigger. The world was a hell of a lot bigger than it is today. I mean, to get that many guys over there on ships, we weren't flying guys in mass over there. And most
troop ships.
Ships, or as a perfect example, today in World War II, the United States Navy took control over France's luxury ocean liner, the Normandy. While it was docked at New York City, the ship was converted into a troop transport ship and renamed the USS Lafayette. The ship had been placed in quote-unquote protective custody when France surrendered to Germany in 1940. So we were literally taking cruise ships, old tugboats, any shrimping vessels, and putting, you guys read Bloody Hill. They're talking about what they called yippies. They're basically old shrimp boats that let's put some steel on the hull and slap some guns on them, and now we got us a Navy. It's like they were taking anything they could to get guys and gear and logistics and everything over there. That's a huge undertaking.
So I think if we really look at it in context, it's unbelievable how quickly we mobilized.
And by the way,
you're right. I agree.
By the way, we had to build an oil pipeline under the channel to get oil over there and fuel over there. Yeah.
Pipeline under the ocean. Pluto, 3-inch pipes.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible what we did. I still, looking back, I cannot believe we were involved in this war for 45 months. 45 months.
Yeah.
And it's still, we feel the effects.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable.
And to your point, Jeff, I mean, who was the happiest guy in the room when Pearl Harbor got attacked? Winston Churchill. He was lighting a cigar and waddling down the hall like, we've got it now. We're good, man. The United States is coming in.
Right. But by 1943, I think it was before Tarawa. It was before some of the bigger bombing campaigns. By the middle of 1943, the American public's like, okay, not seeing many results, right? I mean, this is why we had to have so many war bond drives, because of the American public going, yay, we're all for it. And then, we're getting tired of this. What's next? What's the new thing? The war got old. Who cares? What else are we going to do? We were like that then. It was no different than September 11th. When I got to go over, everybody's got the yellow ribbon magnet on their car, and we're going to, Toby Keith is making all these hits about, kicking somebody's butt and whatever over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And when I got back in 2005, it was like, wait, y'all are still over there? I thought we're done.
Not to mention all 2019.
Cool. I'm sure that's how that China Marine father of yours felt probably in 1940s, going, hey, we're home.
Yeah, well, and he talked about how when he got home, I mean, he just appreciated clean socks and hot coffee and clean water.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And people are in a hurry to get places. He was like, he even talked about, I don't know if this is in the unpublished portion. I think it is. I don't want to get too off into this. I just want to say, on Okinawa, okay, they had buddies who had been over there, Cape Gloucester, Peleliu, Okinawa. They went home and then would write them back saying, I miss you guys. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to come back. I can't connect with anybody back home. I can't remember at this moment if that was in the unpublished stuff or actually in With the Old Breed, but he talked a lot about it at some point. So,
yeah, it's kind of like in, Bloody Ridge. He's talking about after they closed down the Raiders, most of the guys got stayed over there, where him and a handful of his guys got sent back to the United States to do MP duty. And they're like, I didn't train for this boredom. I want to go back on the front line. They're like, what are you talking about? You got the safe cushy job. You're schlepping some brig rats across the country in a train, but you want to go back over there and get back in the hole. I had a thought too. People don't realize either is the best analogy I just came up with we had guy with truck problems. Jeff, you have a truck. I have a truck. Henry, I'm sure at some point in life you had a truck. Imagine you're the only guy with a truck and you have 15 neighbors wanting you to be somewhere to move their couch. We were the same way. You know, we got the Brits wanting us over here. We had the Russians wanting us over here. We got the Australians saying, "Hey, Japanese are coming our way. We need you down here." So we were Chinese. We were the guy with the truck problem. We had all these people wanting us to move their furniture on the same weekend, and we had to figure out how to get it done with one Tundra. And that's all things that you have to take into account.
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, I think if people really did their research, really dug deep and read the right books, it should be the opposite reaction. It should be, wow, I can't believe how quickly y'all did that. Really. And it's funny talking about this too, because I told Don earlier, I've got a few movies that I've watched here recently, and one of them talks exactly about what Henry was saying. It's called I want to say if it was Till the End of Time. I think that was it. Till the End of Time, 1946. Guy Madison, Dorothy McGuire, and my man Robert Mitchum. And it's about three Marines who, no action, but these three Marines that come home after the war and just try to make it in society. And it's kind of a movie ahead of its time, if you ask me. I mean, it's literally 1946. This is not a history. This is current events of these guys coming home. And one of the three had lost use of his legs. Robert Mitchum is this, he's a cow puncher. He's going to own 2,000 acres, and Guy Madison, he's kind of the main star, and he's kind of the jock looking guy, that just that quintessential blonde kid that, all American, that is kind of having a hard time finding a job. Dorothy McGuire's kind of the love interest for both Robert Mitchum and Guy Madison. And she's a war widow, so she's got problems. And these two guys are, I mean, of course, okay, so she's a good looking girl and it's been a while, so they immediately fall in love with her. And then you kind of see the decline of their plans not happening, and I'm not going to do this, and that fell through. So you kind of see this really emotionally powerful movie from 1946 really tell that story, and they actually connect with their old first sergeant to kind of say, "Hey, Top, like we need some help." And there's actually a scene in there where there was some organization, some veteran, we'll help you get on your feet thing, but they did not accept Catholics, Jews, or Negroes. They would not help out those three demographics. So you can really see the time, really come through with that. But guys, I mean, I saw that firsthand. I have some good buddies that it took them a decade to get back on their feet after something like Iraq or Afghanistan. I knew a guy that I was worried about him every single day. I just felt like there's going to be a day I'm going to get that call. And it took for him I helped him get a job. At the time, he couldn't have kept a job at a car wash. And he went out to West Texas, climbed the highest peak in Texas, linked up with an organization that's what they do. They take guys with PTSD, they take combat vets, and they put them on the highest mountains in the Collegiate Mountain Range in Colorado, make them look down on the rest of, the state and go, you're up here now. You did it. And don't let what happened over there define who you are. Let it be part of who you are, but don't let it define you. And I think that was a thing that probably didn't get to our greatest generation guys, certainly didn't get to our Korea, Vietnam era guys. And luckily now we're starting to see there's a psychology to it that it can be beaten. And, while the suicide rate is always going to be there, I think the more options that we have in a modern society with all of these different ways to find something else, all these ways you can connect with so many more people to fit in. It's amazing. Hopefully we don't see that 1946 coming home, wishing you were just back in combat because that was the only place you fit in. Hopefully we finally do get away from that, because combat's always going to be there and it's always going to suck.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get our guys back and learn how to live in the world again.
Was that the name of the movie, Coming Home?
No, Till We Meet Again.
Till We Meet Again. Okay,
No, not Till We Meet Again. Till the End of Time.
Till the End of Time.
Till the End of Time. Yeah.
Back to the it seems to me like, and it's fantastic. It's a little weird. It seemed like it took so long for people to figure this out, but it seems like a lot of that those kind of support groups is based around two things. Idle Hands is the Devil's Playground, and people who can share the same thoughts and history. And so you see this all the time: scuba diving for vets, hunting trips, hiking, fishing. It's like, let's get guys who share the same stuff. Let's get them outdoors again, because that's where they're used to being. Let's find something fun that occupy their time and to get them away from the world and get them into the situation that, especially when it comes to like fishing or hiking or hunting, not so much scuba diving because you got a respirator in your mouth, but something that allows them to do something while talking, allowing them to open up. And it seems like a lot of that truly, really helps, especially being outdoors. So many times I'm out there on my kayak fishing. It's just, you have time to process. And so it seems like a lot of those groups that have great success with helping with PTSD and depression is based on those two things. Find something you enjoy doing. Let's get you around people, and the rest will fall into place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I saw a couple other pretty good movies I wanted to mention too. 1963, PT-109.
Yep.
Cliff Robertson,
yes.
Yeah, Cliff Robertson.
I love
plays
Cliff
JFK.
Robertson.
He did a great, and my dad always talked about that. He goes, "Oh man, that's such a good movie." I always heard him talk about that one. I always heard him talk about that one, and the one with Frank Sinatra, I think, where they're stranded on an island or something. And I never saw that. I forget, but he always talked about that and PT-109. And man, let me tell you, PT-109 is a great war film. It's not, when I say 1963, you probably think, oh, like Battle of the Bulge, where they're using whatever tanks for German tanks. Wow, whatever, Number one, I don't want to hear it. But no, I thought it was really, really well done. And I didn't do the research, but guys, I'm curious. When in 1963 was this movie released? Before or after November 22nd? I'm curious.
That's a good question.
I'm real curious about that. But yeah, if you see that come on your TV, wow, watch it. It's just so well done. Cliff Robertson does a great job playing JFK. He doesn't overdo the JFK accent. He's not trying to be JFK. Obviously he is, but not the way we think of him, in a contemporary reenactor or some biopic. He portrays him well enough to where he doesn't have to sound like him. You get his mannerisms a little bit, but you really get his leadership. And I think he did a great job selling who JFK was as a sailor in World War II. You know what I mean? Pre-politics.
Yeah, without all the hyperbole that came later.
Right. I thought it just did a great job. And there wasn't a whole lot of that added drama that didn't need to be in there. Or I'm sure there was inaccuracies. I don't care. There wasn't any CGI. It's 1963, so it's a great flick.
Where did they film it, Jeff? Do you know?
I wish I could tell you. If it wasn't filmed in the Solomons or New Zealand, Australia, sure looked like it.
Well, the release date was June 19th, 1963, and obviously back then everything's shot on film and edited on film. That means this thing was probably in production in 61, 62, maybe even early as 1960. I'm trying to find your answer to see if production, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Keep talking while I try to find out where this thing was filmed.
So the whole 109 story, wasn't that up in the Central Solomons, Vella La Vella, Rendova, around there? Columbangara?
Yeah, I think, it
was north of Guadalcanal, right?
Well, he was based on Tulagi.
Okay, all right.
It was the PT boat base at Tulagi, and then he ended up somewhere. I can't think of. Was it? I don't know if it was Vella La Vella that they were supporting. I can't remember. That's a good question, but obviously it's the Plum Pudding Island is where they ended up swimming to. But I guess you would say that would be the Central Solomon.
Not to disappoint you, but it is Hollywood. It is the 1960s. The exteriors were filmed at Little Palm Island, formerly known as Munson Island, now a resort in the Florida Keys. Power and fresh water were run to the island for the filming, allowing for the resort to be built years later. So once again, here's another story where formerly a useless piece of land was brought, to modern days for Hollywood filming. And after they left, because they ran power and plumbing, they built the hotels and all that. Let's see here. Oh, sorry. Let's see here. Power and fresh water were run to the island for the filming, allowing for the resort to be built years later. The construction of the sets and the presence of the boats and other paraphernalia during the filming gave rise to the rumors of another U.S. invasion of Cuba. So they're down there filming this movie, and people are seeing all these military vehicles and tents down there in Florida Keys. We're going to invade Cuba. It's gone. Let's see. At the time of the filming being planned, it was found that the few surviving 80-foot Elko PT boats were not in operational conditions, though a future search was conducted, and it was determined that none could be located for use in the film, as almost all had been destroyed in the theaters at the end of World War II. Former World War II era United States Army Air Force 85-foot crash rescue boats were converted to resemble the Elko PT boats. So
interesting.
Yeah, so there was none left.
And I want to say that I saw somewhere where there was only actually 5 PT boats that did come home from the war. None were from the Pacific Theater. All were from the European Theater. I know, of course, the one in Fredericksburg, the one at World War II Museum in New Orleans.
They've got one there. Mm-hmm.
The one, I think there's one in Oregon or Washington.
Not sure.
State. I thought there was one up in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. Now I don't know about the others, but yeah, because they were all scuttled. They were literally instruments of war. Right. So we have zero use for them. And every 80-foot Elko PT boat you bring home is how many Joes that are not coming home? Like, what's the point? They're all made out of plywood. Just, scuttle them. Let's go home. I mean, it breaks your heart thinking of that. All the color footage that you see, I don't know if you guys have seen the color footage at the end of the war, just pushing Hellcats.
Oh, I was thinking of Hellcats going off the end of the light carriers. I mean, they're just get rid of them.
All the Jeeps. You guys will enjoy this. The American AT-6 Texan training plane stood in for the Japanese Zeros on the film.
Oh, that is extremely obvious. But luckily, our American trainers, our advanced trainers, look very close to the Mitsubishi Zeros. Yeah. I mean, they're convincing.
That's what all the Pearl Harbor planes are.
Christ. Yeah, of course. That's how it is. Who cares? I mean, some of the wartime films, if you go back and watch like Wake Island or Guadalcanal Diary, they're not even T6s or SNJs. Some of them are like Wildcats that they put a meatball on. So,
well, the famous footage of Pearl Harbor where they had the Dauntless dive bombers with the meatballs, where they go into, that.
Right.
That's iconic. I mean,
John Ford there.
It says the United States Navy provided support, including the tank landing ships, LSTs as we know them, the 758 USS Duval County, the destroyer of the USS Sulphur, and smaller vessels such as landing crafts and motor whaleboats from nearby Navy Station Key West. After seeing the film, Kennedy called PT-109 a, quote, good product, but was worried about the 2-hour and 20-minute time length. Quote, it's just a question of whether there'll be too much of it. So he was concerned that it was a little too long for the American people. But other than that, he thought it was a good product.
That's neat to know. I mean, like I said, I was wondering if he ever actually got to see it. I mean, I'm glad he got to see it.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about in the past, and we need to get someone from whether Kennedy Museum, an author. We need to do an episode on PT-109 because I don't know enough about it. I don't know if you guys.
I know very little about it.
Well, we can definitely save the full story for another day. But I was very fortunate to get a backstage tour of the 6th floor museum in Dallas. Got to go down in the vault. Oh man, let me tell you. I mean, I got to see all of the contents that were confiscated from Jack Ruby's vehicle.
Wow.
This is stuff not on public display, but to me, I think the really cool thing was a scrapbook that was kept by Kennedy's buddy, was also another PT boat captain that didn't have a ship. So he ends up going with Kennedy that fateful night.
Yep.
And was not on the muster. Of course, he's not listed. So how many guys actually were missing was +1, but they didn't realize it. Well, he also ends up surviving the war. And I think they were buddies at Annapolis, I guess, maybe played football together, whatever it was. They were pretty tight, and they just linked up in Tulagi and said, "Hey, I'll hop on with you. I don't have a craft right now. So, okay, cool. Hop on."
Yeah.
And everything happened. But that guy, when he got back from the war, naturally stayed in touch with Kennedy and kept a scrapbook of all these newspaper clippings as, you know, the senator becomes the president. And what was really cool in there were the tickets from the inaugural dinner that guy got to go to when Kennedy was inaugurated, a little doily napkin from the event, and just little bits, just like, again, a scrapbook. I mean, photos of those two guys on Tulagi during the war, you know, before all that happened, just, you know, not produced anywhere else, just actual photographs that the guy took with a camera of JFK that, you know, I've never seen before. This is down in a box in the vault of the 6th floor museum in Dallas. Like, really cool stuff to be able to flip through it. Yeah, it was cool.
Not to continue down that rabbit hole, but do they have the
ahead.
Mannlicher Carcana, the 6.5 millimeter rifle? That supposedly Oswald had.
You know, I don't remember seeing the Carcana. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a moving museum now. The one corner, supposedly the window, is kind of blocked off. There's plexiglass there, and they have like stacks of boxes of books, you know, from the when it was a book depository. So they tried to leave that one corner pristine, I guess, from 63.
Like the sniper's nest.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you can look down and go, yeah, no. You can't be at that window. You're at the one next to it, looking down at the little white X on the road, like, but whatever. It is, it is what it is. That is an interesting day in history, and it is, again, another rabbit hole, but very, very World War II relevant, you know, of course, with Kennedy, and great movie. Go watch it.
Here's a non-World War II relevant documentary that's history, and it's the only unsolved American hijacking mystery of the American time, which is a documentary on Netflix right now called D.B. Cooper, Where Are You? I'm like 5 episodes into that, and that's pretty interesting. There's people on there who have theories of who D.B. Cooper was, and they hound the shit out of one guy to the fact where he almost sues him. But it's on Netflix. Are you familiar with D.B. Cooper, Jeff?
Yeah.
I'll give you the cliff notes. Back in the 60s, we had no security, and basically hijacking airplanes basically became a thing to do. If you need to get the hell out of a country and want to go somewhere else, you just paid $50, got an airplane, you hijacked it, and they'll take you to Cuba, wherever you wanted to go. D.B. Cooper was a mystery man. He put Dan Cooper on his ticket he bought, and then journalists thought the police called him D.B. Cooper, which is a cooler name than Dan Cooper. Long story short, guy gets on a Pan Am flight. It's only a half-hour flight. He's in the back, all done up, dapper, shirt, tie, sunglasses. Tells the stewardess to sit down next to him, opens up his briefcase. He's got a bomb in there. Gives her a note. They land at the airport. I forget which airport it was. They land at the airport. He basically, before landing, they send a letter back to the police. And at the time, I guess we negotiated with terrorists. He wanted $200,000 in 1971 money and 4 parachutes. Why I say 4? Well, because they give you 1, they can brick that son of a bitch and you're dead. So for whatever reason, they land. There's this $200,000 and 4 parachutes, which they promptly bring on the airplane. He lets everybody off but the crew, and they let the plane take off again. Oh, it's Washington State. It says they were flying from Washington State down south. He tells the pilot to fly at I think 250 miles per hour, which is incredibly slow for that Pan Am flight. Keep the flaps down and fly a certain altitude. And at a certain time, he told the stewardess to go up front. He lowered the aft stairs, just walked off and parachuted away with $200,000, and they've never caught him. And it's been a huge mystery. There's all these theories of who this guy is. Clearly, he's ex-military to know this and that. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a mini series on Netflix right now called DB Cooper, Where Are You? And it's a pretty fun, cool little documentary to watch. But yeah, it's the only air heist in history that was never resolved. And yeah,
wow, maybe because the chute didn't open.
Well, that's why he asked for 4, so that, that way they thought maybe he was going to force other people to jump. They didn't want to, he would think that maybe they didn't want to risk. And that's the question: did he land? Did he survive? Did he get away with it? They've never found a parachute. Some people claim they found some of his money, but yeah, that's the mystery. The police never found him, and that was 1971, so all these years ago.
That's great. Well, that actually segues into the last thing I wanted to talk about, which also is not necessarily World War II related directly.
Yeah, we do history,
but it's a film that I know Henry said he saw. I just got to see.
I'm trying to go, but the only lady don't want to go with me. So
you slacker, Don. You need to get out there.
I just finished the book too, Jeff.
Oh man. So Henry, yeah, you go first.
I'll go this weekend. That'll be my mission.
Oh man,
I'll go this weekend.
Yeah. What'd you think?
You want me to take it away?
You take it away.
Yeah, I mean, so I saw the movie first, and then read the book after the movie.
What movie are we talking about?
We were talking about Devotion by our good buddy Adam Makos. The movie based on the book by our buddy Adam Makos about the first black naval aviator Jesse L. Brown and the other hero Tom Hudner. But yeah, I mean, so it was kind of interesting to. My wife and my son had read the book, and one of my son's friends who went with us had just finished the book. I had not read it till after. Of course, we saw the movie literally days after my mom's passing, so a lot going on. But yeah, after I started reading the book last week and just finished it up Sunday, or Saturday rather. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Jeff, I know you're a big Corsair guy like I am. I mean, beautiful shots of those Dash 5s. And some F-8F Bearcats, an airplane that I really know very little, next to nothing about, because if it didn't see service in World War II, I just tend to not be interested in it. But great shots of the Corsair. But yeah, I really enjoyed the book, and I enjoyed the movie as well. I thought that, there were certain aspects of the story, without putting too fine a point on it, there were certain aspects of the story that they could have really just pounded into your head, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they did that. They put just enough of it out there to kind of contextualize it. But it just was I thought a really well done film. What'd you think, Jeff?
I went with my wife. We had a nice little date night. So the fact that even happened while the film was still in theaters was a miracle in itself, right? Just based on our schedule. So really lucky that I got to see it with her. And I knew going in, so this is a gal that she didn't like Midway.
What?
I know.
If you say she liked Pearl Harbor but not Midway, I'm going to be upset.
But she buys you World War II stuff, man.
Right. So she's amazing. But so I get it. So what she expected out of Midway with what she knew about it, and of course what I was expecting, were two different things. She doesn't want an airplane movie where it's this. You're looking at a guy in the cockpit. Oh, man. She doesn't want that the whole time. I get it. Me, I want to feel the lack of gravity in the SBD as you're coming in on the hear you, right? Like I wanted that. Okay, but Devotion was so different for her. I think she cried 5 times.
But who's
pristine
counting?
Is the word that came to my mind. I honestly think it's one of the best war movies I think I've ever seen, guys, because, and Henry touched on it, nothing is overdone. Nothing is over dramatized. You get just enough. The script, the character development is perfect because you don't need all of this. You just step in time for 9 months, I think, March to December 1950. And what is done in that time, you don't need anything else. So there was no real wasted, like, where were they going with that? Or did they just miss that in editing? Like, I feel like that was going to go somewhere, and then they never went back to it. Like, there was none of that. And I'm a little bit of a weirdo, but I loved the lack of vulgar language. Now,
no, I like that too.
Now, I will say that to prepare, you know, not to give anything away, but to prepare some of the people who haven't seen it, there are some racial slurs, but done in a way where it's telling the story. It's really telling the story, right? This is a movie that helps you just completely re-examine the United States of America in 1950, where we were at after the big show, what it was like to be an aviator then. You know, these guys are itching. They say, all these guys came home with this big fruit salad, everything hanging off their chest, you know, after 45. And these guys just barely didn't make it, just graduated Annapolis in November of 45 or whatever it was, you know, and itching for that, but not in an overly uncautious way, I guess is what I'm trying to. They don't seem like they're just a bunch of daredevil pilots that are trying to prove themselves in an F-8 or the Corsair. Like, it's just, man, guys, it's just so well done. And there were times that really hit me personally. I've I've never been in a Corsair, right? I've never been a naval aviator. I've never been in air-to-air combat, but I've lost a very close friend that I served with. And the dynamic between the two main guys was so familiar to me because our bunks were that close. And I thought so much about my battle buddy seeing this film. Their interactions were so similar. I never would have thought I'd get that out of a Korea War film about Corsair pilots, to where a gunner and a driver in a Humvee in Iraq had so many similarities. It's just, I can't wait to talk to Adam Makos again. I can't wait to hear if our listeners go see it. Chime in, email us, call us.
Mail call at WTSP-WorldWar2.com. And real quick, speaking of Korean War and coming home from combat, one of the things we heard, you know, short little, half these guys, probably maybe their older brothers, their uncles fought in World War II. They were definitely alive during that time. They saw the welcome home parades and all that their relatives had. And then when they came home from the Korean War, no one was around because everybody's at home watching this new invention called the television. They got like no fanfare when they came home from that war. Like, they just came home to empty streets and empty airports. Oh, yeah, here's a camera or two. Like,
great, welcome back. I don't want to miss the Ed Sullivan Show. Get out of the way.
Exactly. So, and speaking of books, you know, the book pipeline finally opened up for Henry and myself. Shout out to Jeff and his family. I got a little book care package the other day, including A Wing and a Prayer, The Longest Winter, The Longest Day, and Dirty Little Secrets of World War II. So my library here got a nice little addition to it. So I'm actually looking forward to reading The Longest Day. So that's probably the first one of those that I dig into, and then obviously The Longest Winter as well. But thank you so much for those books, fella. Appreciate it.
And let me jump in right behind you, Don, and echo that, Jeff. I really appreciate the World War II mortar sight case sitting right there that I showed you. And after I finish the book I'm reading now, because I said I just finished Devotion, I started another book. When I finish it, I think I'm going to read the Charles McDonnell Company Commander book, because he was at Hurtgen and in the Ardennes, I believe. So I'm vitally interested in that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I tried to give you guys both, you know, I have a lot of duplicates, and I tried to give you guys stuff that was a little bit varied that I thought you would be interested in, but at the same time, maybe broaden the horizon too. Yeah. I didn't want to just give Don Pacific War stuff. And I'm Henry, remind me again what I sent you, because I remember that one.
I think you sent me Longest Day as well, Charles McDonnell, Company Commander. Oh man.
Did I not send you If You Survive, George Wilson? Did I not send you that one?
I don't think you did.
Okay.
I know it's Charles McDonnell, Company Commander.
Okay.
Which I believe, wasn't he at Hurricane Forest and Normandy? And
I'm trying to remember.
I know. I mean, my head, they all run together.
That was one I remember reading, not maybe 2-3 years ago. Of course, The Longest Day. Yeah, I got so many copies of that.
Yeah, I know I got that one.
Gosh, yeah, I can't think of what I sent, but yeah. So enjoy the books. Yeah, I mean that's what we do, guys. I mean, I get some stuff. People like, hey, I think you'd appreciate that. Absolutely, thank you. And to send it on, especially if it's something I've already read and I feel that it does anybody no good having this stuff sit back here. I mean, yes, it helps me. But when I come across books like that, I mean, I think I told Adam Makos when we had him on, I don't have a copy of A Higher Call because it's just too good to sit behind me. It had to go to somebody, and it actually went to my uncle, an in-law, and married my aunt, who lost. He is named after his uncle, wow, who was killed December 16th of 44 at the Bulge. So to know that, we do have some of that in our family, and he's a big aviator. He was a Navy mechanic. He was on the Enterprise, then retired from American Airlines, and A Higher Call was like a no-brainer to send him for his birthday, not a month or so ago. So yeah, guys, enjoy it, and whatever, pass them on, and I'll have more coming your way. I mean, like I said, it does no good here, and so I'm glad y'all liked it.
Thank you.
And I want to say thanks to everybody who continues to support our podcast. And this, I think we got maybe one episode left before the end of the year. But I want to thank each and every one of you for your continued support. And if you, as we said earlier, if you want to support the show, please head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com or D-410.com and click on that Patreon link. Subscribe. I'm going to get a hold of Jeff and Henry off the air. I got an idea for our Patreon members. We're going to do a little recording. It's going to be only for the Patreon members. We got to do a lot more of that stuff, and I have an idea for the holiday season I want to come up, but we'll get to that later. Thank you guys so much, and as always, please email us at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com, and we will talk to you all soon.
This has been a Digital 410 production.